The current topics that we're learning about right now, they're all there in which book are
I haven't made these books.
Because I just going through it and I found it paper 1 volume 3. But I don't know what to get to UPSC.
Don't follow these books.
Target person, Robert Merton. Our thinkers and the
Sorry?
Our thinkers, target person, Robert Merton.
Organizational thinkers, na? So these I made you write. What haven't you written? What did I teach that you haven't written? The way committees and organization. Yeah, I'll send you. Don't worry.
The development segment is there in this.
But I'm not teaching from here. No? Yeah.
You're following some sort of chronology according to these.
No. These books you can't rely on them. Well, I haven't read them, but I don't know the person who has made it. Don't follow these. I mean, you can pick out a few things from here. So there's, see, these generic topics, na? Bureaucracy and development in Indian perspective. Things like these you can pick out from here. But the core understanding when it comes to the real stuff, na, this things do not have it. Joan Robinson's critique of New Rate philosophy. Paul Sterin, Deepak Nair, Jean Dreze, integrated relationship between state and market. State is overburdened, failure is more misplaced and distorted state priorities. Catalytic factor, Denard and Denard model, public service. This is what changing the role of the state. I mean, of course, you can use it, but don't rely on it. You can use a few good stuff. Sorry. Today we'll do something called, what was the last thing we did yesterday? Washington Consensus we are about to do. What is Washington Consensus?
Reform package for developing country crisis.
So what all reforms are there? What is this? The commandments we discussed. Initial parts we have discussed, no?
Mentioned that they were called commandments, but we didn't get into
The death of it, no? ठीक है, समझ गया. So we'll do this, and after finishing this, we'll move to public policy unit. Public policy. I'll make you write a few things in public policy. Let's start with this then. So till now, in 1990s, what movement came? LPG reforms. And when it comes to movement in public administration, what kind of movement came in 80s, 90s? NPM. So prior to this, they had a lot of problem with the problems in the welfare state. Yes. So the backdrop was Reaganism and Thatcherism. Reaganism and Thatcherism. Now, when it comes to Reaganism and Thatcherism, they were against what? They were against state control of sectors. Yes. State control of sectors led to monopolization and inefficient bureaucracies. Monopolization and inefficient bureaucracies happened due to this. The problem, the solution to this problem, they said, is that making the state lean. Okay, making the state get a state out of those sectors in which private sectors can take care of themselves. So privatization started, liberalization started, this movement started. Basically, new liberalism took root in these countries under these Reagan administration and Margaret Thatcher administration. Reagan in USA and Thatcher in UK. During this period, 1980s and 90s, you see that IMF and World Bank were having significant amount of influence in providing structural assistance programs to different countries. They were saying, okay, this is the model of development that you need to follow in order to come out of poverty, whatever problem global south has, you follow these set of guidelines and you will get out of it. Similarly, LPG reforms happened in India under same things, that IMF and World Bank say, if you want loans from us, these loan conditionalities were used as a this conditionality used as a wedge to drive reforms into these countries. These reforms are what? These LPG reforms. So liberalization and privatization of the economy and industry. In this process, this guy named John Williamson. John Williamson says, he uses this term for the first time, the Washington Consensus. Washington Consensus, he says, that these institutions based in Washington I mean, the US-based institutions such as the World Bank and IMF, and the US Treasury Department, that means their finance ministry, they follow a set of policies or economic policies that they are prescribing to other countries. So, at this time, when the USSR disintegrated, their prescription had a lot of backing in terms of that our method works and theirs don't. So this is, in a unipolar world, this is the only way how you develop an economy. Right? So policy or economic policy was driven by this particular thing. So eventually, I mean, it makes sense also that USSR disintegrated and only model is the American model to follow. Eventually, after the 90s, in the early 2000s, 2010s, we see this Washington model faltering. That whatever America used to prescribe, it didn't always work. Yes, we see 2008 global financial crisis. We see the rise of China during this time, and within 30-40 years, China significantly increased its GDP. Okay? Currently standing at almost $18 trillion economy. That means American model is not the only way, nor is it the one best way of development. Okay? Are you able to understand? Now, because with time, things changed, new models emerged, and the American model was questioned, and there are a lot of problems within the American model. A new set of guidelines or new set of principles was required when it comes to global economic policy. This is not written in any book or etc. etc. This is a very recent phenomena that happened, a London consensus, but it is very important for us when it comes to development dynamics and public policy. I mean, whole of public administration, this is important. Even though this is not a public administration meeting. These are a bunch of economists who sat in the London School of Economics and decided this. But it is very much relevant to us. What happened was, in 2023 in LSE, these 55 economists and they discussed the issues economic policy is facing. Now, before 20 years, how economic policy was determined? For example, in 2005, how is the economic policy determined around the world? According to what Washington says, or whatever the Washington model is. Yes? Makes sense? Because it's the largest economy, most powerful economy, etc., etc., all the good things about America. Now, when we ask ourselves that which economic model to follow? Now, every country has a different economic model. Somewhere India's economy is also working somewhere. Chinese model is also, of course, working. Similarly, Korean models are working. Vietnamese model, Malaysian model, Western Europe's model is working. Scandinavian model is working. Not just the American model is working. And at many times, American model is not working. That means, at present, whatever global challenges we have, the question is this Washington's model enough? That is why these economists sitting in LSE, they came out with certain principles that how the policy framework or the new framework for 21st century, that how economic policy should be determined in this century. Okay. Now, Washington consensus. What exactly is Washington consensus and why it will become a problem and why London consensus will be required. Okay. So, Washington consensus. It was born out of a reaction to perceived failure of state-led development models. The core belief was that economic growth is deepening in developing countries could be best achieved by free market, minimum state intervention, and strict fiscal discipline. That is cutback of the state, ruling back of the state, and letting the market determine a lot of things and take care of itself. Yesterday's example I gave you, that Hurricane Katrina and the price of water. Yes, so that is why. That is why the Washington Consensus is saying the same thing. Let free market and laissez-faire economy determine things. Now, what are these Washington Consensus commandments? First, fiscal discipline should be there. Reduce government borrowing by cutting spending. Basically, reduce the government spending. Reduce government spending, do not borrow a lot, and let private players, let the market take care of things. So do not borrow a lot and provide services to people. Let the services be provided by the market. Because if you start borrowing a lot, you are yourself inefficient, and this borrowings will have no limit. You will keep borrowing and problems will happen. So fiscal discipline, strict fiscal discipline should be followed. Secondly, prioritize public expenditure. Redirect spending from subsidies towards pro-growth investments like health, education, and infrastructure. That means pro-growth investment. Now, what is it saying? It says things such as do not spend a lot on subsidies or salaries, etc., etc. You just make the state lean. If you are spending, spend in areas that can increase economic growth. Okay? Paying salaries does not necessarily increase economic growth, but building roads, highways, waterways, ports, this creates infrastructural growth. Providing education and healthcare, this provides human capital growth. Okay, so they are saying prioritize public expenditure into areas that has tendency to increase economic growth. No, this is an example. For example, salaries. See, in the last 5 years, the capex, that means capital expenditure of the government under annual budget, has almost increased 5 times, from almost 2 lakh crore to 10 lakh crore. Capital expenditure means what? You are increasing the revenue generation capacity of the economy. You are creating conditions where economic growth can boom up. So where are you bringing in so much money? India's revenue or taxation revenue for the government did not increase 5 times in the last 5 years. It didn't. They cut back on something. What did they cut back on? Back on subsidies. So previously we used to give subsidies at a higher level. So electricity subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, etc. A lot of leakages used to be there. Now for that we have switched to direct benefit transfer. Whatever the money we saved, we are putting into capital expenditure to promote growth. So salaries, why salaries is, see, when it comes to modernization of modernization of military. So previously, lot of people were required to carry out military operations. Now it's a mix of both. You need machines, you need technology integrated into people. But the number of people that were required before is not required now. So this prioritize public expenditure, this is saying, this model, neoliberal model is saying that you reduce people wherever you can. Don't bloat the government departments. What did we study about overgrown states? That state became the only employer. So rather than putting money on a reform or something that will generate revenue and economic growth in the future, lot of money used to go in paying salaries. So this was the criticism that was also brought into our defense budget, that almost 80-85% of our defense budget goes to paying salaries. So you reduce that with time in the next 10 years and redirect that money into modernization of defense industry, so that our equipments, the people that are in the army or in the armed forces, they get equipments which are cutting edge in nature. Because now armed forces are changing in nature. Previously you needed a lot of people and that determined how much strength you had. But now it's the integration of technology and a lot of things when it comes to defense. So salaries, I said in that sense, that you reduce the amount of non-capital expenditure that you have. Are you able to understand? Of course, you are going to pay teachers and doctors salaries. You don't reduce that. But when it comes to salary, the meaning was you don't bloat the government department, you make them lean and strong in nature.
Government recruits so many people so as to provide them employment. Now, if I'm hiring, I'm a government entity, I'm hiring like 10,000 people, and in the next 10 years I cut down 5,000 of them. I'm essentially leading to joblessness for those 5,000 people, right? So how are you going to tackle that situation?
So that's the problem in this neoliberal policy. Now. That is why at present day, we talk about things such as social equity, government being responsible for a lot of things. This is the problem. Whatever you are saying, these are the problems that London consensus have taken up. These are the problems with neoliberal policy. Neoliberal policy is not a watertight policy, of course, right? If it was, it would be the one best way to do things, right? So, next, tax reforms. Broaden the tax base and adopt moderate rates. Basically, you must have seen whenever the Republicans come in the US, okay, they are more neoliberal in nature as compared to the Democrats. So they reduce the tax rates or give a lot of corporate tax cuts. This means what? You reduce the taxation of businesses so that business get more money to invest and spur up economic growth. Okay, so tax reform, broaden the tax base and adopt moderate rates. That means when it comes to tax rates, reduce them so that it does not burden businesses and people. And when you reduce the tax rate, the tax bracket increases, compliance increases, so people reduce the amount of tax they were sending somewhere else. Yes. Decontrol interest rate, allow interest rate to be market determined. So presently, or before reforms of 1991, we used to control the rate, or government used to determine what is the exchange rate and what is the interest rate in the economy. But now it is the market that determines. Yes. So decontrol has happened of interest rate and exchange rate. Similarly, this is what their commandment is: trade liberalization. That means liberalization of 1991 happened like this. You reduce the licenses, you let economic growth happen. Basically, it is providing everything that the market needs to grow. Okay? This is the Washington consensus. Foreign direct investment, that abolish whatever barriers there are for foreign companies to invest into your economy. That is foreign direct investment. Then privatize state-owned enterprises. Whatever, for example, Air India, what privatized? It's according to this policy, this neoliberal policy. Then deregulation. Scrap the regulations. For example, in a particular sector, government used to dominate or used to be the only one there. But now, after the LPG reforms, we have deregulated those sectors. That means what? Deregulation of those sectors mean you let the private players compete with the government. You do away with the monopoly that was there. This gives people more options. Yes, this gives government more competition. So government is now more and more responsible towards the citizenry to provide goods and services at competitive prices at private level. And your tax money is not wasted in bloated government organizations. Okay? So this was, and the last one was grant and uphold property rights through secure legal ownership of assets. Basically, government should protect the private entities' rights on property, contract, etc., etc. Now, you don't have to remember all of the whatever they are doing, whatever the commandments are, but understand the sense of what this Washington consensus is doing, right? The question might not directly come on London consensus. I mean, they might, but they won't directly come on what are the commandments of Washington consensus. No. Basically, questions revolve around this, but you will, of course, write these answers under, for example, if an answer comes under challenges in the syllabus is directly written, the challenges to liberalization, privatization, and globalization. And this is a perfect example of this. Yes, that what does Washington Consensus represent? LPG reforms. What is the problem with that? And what is the solution and the way forward? That is the London Consensus. So, the consensus gained immense credibility after the fall of Soviet Union. Yes, and fueled the hyper globalization of the 1990s and 2000s. Okay, but it began to unravel after 2008 financial crisis and the rise of China, because this was the new model of development that works. The backlash now comes from the very Western countries that once championed this Washington's model of development. Okay? So, a week back, that 2023 meetings, whatever the consensus was, it was published 1 week back. And that was the London Consensus. Okay? After the May 2023 meeting at London School of Economics, it brought together 55 prominent scholars, including Roderick, Blanchard, Velasco, to forge a new economic consensus for 21st century. Okay? It is more measured and tentative than its predecessor. It acknowledges new challenges like climate change, artificial intelligence, and authoritarian populism. These are real challenges. It rejects one size fits for all recipe that Washington Consensus was. That this is the model of development, there is no other way. And argues that each nation must have its own policies based on its unique history and circumstances. Now you understand that how global south is represented here, that your model, your culture, your needs are very much different. That is why you say how you are going to develop. But they have come up with certain principles that everybody should follow. For example, things such as, not here, things such as human rights. Okay, now human rights is not culture specific. If you are discriminating people on the basis of caste, gender, etc., that means you can't say, okay, this is part of our culture. That means there are some things that are always universal, some principles. These principles are universal that way. So they have come up with certain principles, but they say these are not total end goals. These are principles that needs to be kept in mind in everyday governance. Okay? Let's see. Focus on well-being. Now, beyond economic growth, they are looking at things. For example, things such as the gross happiness index in Bhutan. Okay? So this has nothing to do with GDP growth, but they measure people's happiness on the basis of how they feel, etc., etc. So measure of development there is not how many roads or infrastructure we build. For example, measure is whether people are happy or not in their everyday life, if they are facing certain mental health challenges or not, whether they like the particular greenery around them or the natural resources they have or the natural beauty there. So this is the measure of actual well-being of people, and this is what they recognize. So Takshila, write GHI Bhutan as an example of this first point. Huh. It includes, so the goal of policy should go beyond GDP and monetary income. We should go beyond GDP to include non-material conceptions of well-being like self-worth, social status, cohesion. Okay? So, I mean, it is taking it to a more personal, social, and cultural level when it comes to well-being. It is not just material well-being that West used to focus. Governments must intervene if market limits competition or fail to tax monopoly, thereby eroding public trust. That means well-being of market also, not just of people, of market also. That market should not be monopolized by these private entities. Okay, so government should go and break those monopolies. Okay, give people certain options to do it. Second, make growth matter. That means equitable growth. Growth should not be only focused on things such as only a few people are benefiting out of it. Make growth matter for all. Growth is still crucial for public trust. For you to improve public trust, government needs to achieve some growth, but the quality of that growth is what matters. The emphasis should be on where and how growth is happening, whether it is creating sufficient jobs and benefiting a broad segment of population. So jobless growth was a phenomena in the early 20th century, and we do not want that. What we want is actually people taking part in uh, in the development story. Growth is actually giving growth to a broad segment of population, not only in terms of GDP numbers. Okay, it should actually impact people. Build resilience. The government must act as an insurer of last resort. So whenever any kind of global shocks are happening, climate shocks are happening, healthcare shocks are happening, so the pandemic is happening, government should be there for the citizen at the last resort. If the citizen has nowhere to go, government should always be available. Okay? The government must act as an insurer of last resort against major shocks at both macroeconomic and individual household level. For example, macroeconomic means just tariffs have increased. That's a macroeconomic shock. At an individual level, if somebody is suffering from some kind of significant disease, okay, that breaks the savings and everything of that household, the government should be there to help. So, insurer of the last resort. You build a resilient society. So, a properly functioning welfare state is essential to provide insurance against contingency like pandemics or sudden policy shocks. Yes. Now, building resilience means also things such as climate resilience. That government should be there to protect people against any kind of natural calamities, etc. So that means building resilience. Fourth principle: put politics first. Now, here, when it comes to building resilience, we are building against what kind of shocks? Climate, healthcare, economic. But here they are saying put politics first means here they are saying there are political shocks as well. Political shocks are what? Rising totalitarianism or rising populism around the world. These are political shocks. For example, anti-immigration policies in some countries, okay? Such as rise of certain totalitarian tendencies in some countries. Yes, that means democratic deconsolidation is happening. That is why put politics first means you reform politics first. You make politics. Where is it? Where politics itself can be a source of economic shocks, you reform politics into an enabler of economic growth, into an enabler of providing well-being, into an enabler of equitable development rather than being the reason of political shocks. So it reverses basically the Washington consensus that do not put market first, put politics first. If politics is correct, if the strong state is correct, this was the strong state versus market debate. If the strong state is correct in its place, market will automatically do well because you are lean, you are protecting the market from any kind of shocks, and you are letting market do its job. Still, you are not a weak state. Put politics first. Then comes invest in state capacity. Now, state should have adequate capacity building adequate capacity building so that businesses can trust their risk and their enterprise into promoting economic growth. Basically, if the state is strong enough, it's able to deliver on its policy. Okay? Strong just does not mean that state should only stay in the area wherever it is only required. For example, it is required in defense, education, healthcare. Not just that. State should have capacity in every regard, in legal and regulatory institutions as well. So regulatory institutions should not be able to be pushed around by the private players according to whatever they need. Okay, that's why state capacity should be strong enough to deliver development. When the state capacity is strong enough, then people are or entrepreneurs are able to trust the state that their investment won't go down the drain because some kind of political shocks happen. For example, if people who had would have invested in Myanmar 5 years ago or 10 years ago, their investment would have gone down the drain when the military took over there. So that's why politics and state capacity needs to be put first, and capacity building should be there. Okay? This is what London Consensus is saying. It is making growth more equitable in nature. It is putting or reforming the state or politics first. Okay, so it changes the way we only saw neoliberalism. It is bringing certain, it is tweaking neoliberalism to become more people-centric in nature, become more democratic in nature. Okay, it is considering the present challenges such as climate change. Okay. Washington was one size fits for all. This is more context specific. So each nation should decide for itself whatever they need. Yes. Therefore, they have given certain principles, not commandments. Economic growth is the primary goal. There is well-being. That apart from economic growth, non-material and social factors should be there. For example, if a country has very high economic growth, but things such as what do you say? Things such as community is not so important. So when a study was done, especially in the Scandinavian countries, that why these there is so much well-being and development, human development in these areas. What is the reason that people are so happy there? That gross happiness index that was started, Scandinavian people scored one of the highest alongside Bhutan, etc. The reason was asked, why is that so? Because their model of development has been very much different than American model of development. So American model of development, even though created a lot of material growth, their society was very individualistic in nature. It led to high growth of mental health problems. Yes, a lot of mental health problems and alienation of the individual from the society. In Scandinavia, however, the model of development was much different. The countries were very much interested in taxing a lot. Almost 50-60% was the tax. But their social security nets were very high. The government used to provide lot of goods and services. The education was free, healthcare was free, and of very high quality. Similarly, their prison system was very good. Law and order was very good. Was is. So the taxation rates are high, but social security nets are very much strong. So this was a different model of development, and Scandinavian society had a very communitarian culture. They used to be grounded in the community. Okay, so basically, in a culture that taxes more, a country that taxes more and provides social security to people, it shows what? That growth is not only for you, it's for everybody. It is inherently that the nature of those policies are very communitarian in nature. But when it comes to low tax and the individual gets to keep all the resources that person is generating, it is inherently very individualistic in nature. Yes, Akshila, can you write an example for this? in this, when it comes to economic growth and well-being, just write an example of American society and Scandinavian society. And under Scandinavian society, right, that given that given that taxation is too high to provide high quality social security, it leads to it is inherently a very community specific or community caring policy, economic policy. The role of the state is minimal. State should get out here, regulate, privatize, get out of the way of the market. Here, state is an enabler, insurer. Okay, that any problem happens, state is there. Okay, it provides more and more public trust into the state. Okay? State, basically, state is or a politics is a constraint on development. Politics should be removed, and here politics is seen as an enabler. Good policy or good state or a strong state is important in this. Here, uh, of course, it was rigid and ideological. That neoliberalism was very prominent in this. And the criticism of this is it's very vague in nature. These principles, vague in the sense they do not give concrete policies for institutions. Precisely, but again, I mean, if you have to write a limitation, that is the counter perspective you write, right? Not that I want to criticize it. Uh, so it does not give concrete or particular specific guidelines of what to do. Conclusion, you can you yourself will understand. Let's go to public policy. Show me that book once. There is syllabus, right? In there, is there syllabus written? कोई नहीं. In comparative public administration, they have given you British Constitution, French Constitution. Hmm. Have you gone through any of these books, Paul? No. But you got these books long ago, I guess. Why did you not go through? Class note. No. A lot of trust. Uh, Too much extra stuff, irrelevant stuff. But if you want to, you pick some of the things whichever you find relevant after you have read whatever is taught in class. See whatever is relevant. If you can pick out certain value addition from there. Public policy now will start. That just I have handwritten notes of mine. I'll dictate. Rabe, did you get the notes that I have mailed you? Okay. Pawan, you have completed your GS, I believe. Some parts are left. Ethics all you have done. Where are you studying this from? Hyderabad. What is this institute? Okay. Is it good? You understand everything? Okay. Uh, Start writing. Let's dictate. Public policy. Concept of public policy. I guess you are also from Hyderabad, no? You're from Mumbai. Okay. So you are originally born and brought up in Mumbai. So, which school did you go to? DAV. Ready? So, public policy, right? Public policy is a foundational concept in governance. In general, it denotes. In general, it denotes a set of goals. It denotes a declaration of goals. Beg your pardon. Denotes a declaration of goals, comma, a set of rules for guidance, and a statement by the government about what it intends to do or not to do. What it intends to do or not to do. According to Wayne Parson, according to Wayne Parsons, this Talcott Parson one, Wayne Parson, public policy is an attempt to define. Public policy is an attempt to define and structure on a rational basis for action or interaction. On a rational basis on action and interaction. Essentially, public policy streamlines and rationalizes government activity, making its actions meaningful, and anchored to defined purposes. And anchored to defined purposes. Without public policy, the government and its administration, will become rudderless, and chaotic. Now, let's write some definitions of public policy. See, public policy is a topic where, from now on, after CPA has ended and some things in development administration, feminist perspective has ended, we only have notes to write. There is no concepts left. Probably we'll read some concepts in administrative law, but that's a 10 minutes explanation. That's it. No other concepts left. Well, it's a writing heavy from now on for all of you for next 1.5 months. Write Thomas Dye and Robert Lineberry. Thomas Dye and Robert Lineberry. They famously define. They famously define public policy as, quote, whatever the government chooses to do or not to do, unquote. Basically, it was an action-oriented view by Dye and Lineberry. This definition is crucial. Because it includes both action example, passing a law, comma, and inaction, example, not to deregulate a particular industry. So if the government is thinking, for example, to bring a particular law to regulate an industry, for example, the AI industry, it wants to regulate that AI industry. Okay? Now, the government can choose to bring a law or not to bring a law. Government not bringing a law is also a public policy. So the government has decided not to go into it. That's also public. So public policy is not just the law that is passed or a framework that is passed. It is something that the government has not done also. So that is why it's very important for Dye and Lineberry to say it's an action of the government, whether the government is doing something or choosing not to do something. All right. So that's why then right. It also highlights a very key debate: is policy. It also highlights a very key debate that is policy is merely an expression of the will of the state, or is it all about what state actually does? Dye and Lineberry argue, Thomas Dye and Lineberry argue that mere expression is meaningless Policy is realized only through action. Policy is realized only through action. So let's understand what they are saying. They are saying, of course, government can write a law, pass a legislation, bring out a policy, puts 100 circulars. If government is not acting upon it, if it is dormant in nature, it's not public policy. You must have seen that every few years, uh, uh, every few years, the government removes a lot of laws that are there. Laws in the sense which are not applicable anymore. It removes. But still the law is there, right? It was there since the last 100 years. Before they were removed, the law were there. But was the government acting upon it? No, right? There was no implementation of that. Nothing it can be seen. So Lineberry and Dye will say, why this is not public policy. Government has to act. That means government can choose to do something or not to do something. That is an action. So they are very action oriented in nature. Okay? So basically, inaction is also an action according to them. Okay? Now, then next. David Easton. David Easton. The systems view. He gave, from a systems perspective, it is the output of the political system no sorry from systems perspective from a systems perspective, public policy is the authoritative allocation. Public policy is the authoritative allocation for the whole society. Allocation of values for the whole society. Authoritative allocation of values for the whole society. In this view, or according to this view, policy is the output of the political system. Of the political system. It is a legitimate framework. It is the legitimate framework through which policy issues are attended to and society is managed. Policy issues are attended to and society is managed. Next is Berkland's key attribute of public policy. Berkland's key attributes of public policy. Berkland says, given the difficulty in finding a single definition, Berkland will highlight 6 characteristics. Okay, to characterize public policy. First, policy is made in response to a problem that requires attention. Policy is made in response to a problem that requires attention. So you might have seen things such as dog bites in Delhi. Okay, so that's a thing that requires attention. That's a problem that requires attention. Not all problems are public policy. Second, policy is made. I mean, your wish. Write it down. It's good only. policy is made on public's behalf? Generous amount of examples and case studies. Nobody wants to hear the theory. They just want 3-4 lines of theory. You write the application part of it. Yeah. That's why in your, yeah, that's the way to score. So the next, how much ever example you can write with the theoretical part. The question is theoretical. You answer the theoretical part in half a page. Then you write why that theory is relevant, etc., etc. You write examples. You fill it with examples, actually relevant examples. Okay? Not something of your imaginary examples, but relevant examples, real life examples. That's why whenever we finish our classes, you start reading those notes and think about which all newspapers you have read. That's why newspaper reading is very important. That which all issues you can use as example in these topics, because while writing answers you shouldn't take time to think. Okay, you know, while this answer, these are the examples in your mind, you fatafat write it. There is no pressure on you. It boosts up score. That is the only way to score on the public's behalf. So first two characteristic, just take first two characteristic. Basically, what all issues are policy made on? There has to be a problem, and that problem should impact or should be a problem for the public. It's not a personal problem. For example, you are fighting with your friend. That's not a public problem. Okay? So there has to be some issue. For example, drainage in this place. It's an issue. Traffic in metro cities. It's an issue. So these are whatever the public is facing challenges. That is the area in which public policy is made. Okay, this is the first two characteristics. Policy is oriented towards a goal, or a desired state. Or a desired state. Example, I mean, when we solve a problem, for example, let's think of an example. If you solve a problem, such as malnutrition. Okay? Now, a goal towards providing nutrition to people, micronutrients to people, to children, etc. Midday meal schemes, etc., etc. So, what state do we want to reach? A state where everybody is healthy, right? Nutritionally, everybody is healthy. So, basically, that is the state in this term. And this state we want to reach, a state of adequate health, etc., etc. Example, the solution to a problem. Fourth, policy is ultimately made by government. Policy is ultimately made by government, even if ideas come from outside. Even if ideas come from outside. So that means what? Ultimately, government is a policy maker. The ideas can be public, within the government, private sector, anything, pressure groups, etc., etc. In this example, you write as examples. You just send me those examples later on. Okay, I'll also incorporate in the notes. As an examples, right? ADR's role, Association for Democratic Reform's role in bringing in election reforms. ADR's role in election reforms. Or from outside, another case called Lily Thomas versus Union of India. Lily Thomas versus Union of India. So when it comes to examples, you can write certain case studies, use judgments, use committee recommendation, how much ever you can use. That is the key. And then next, you write, policy is interpreted. Policy is interpreted and implemented by various public. Policy is interpreted and implemented by various public and private actors who may have different motivations and interpretations. Who may have different motivations and interpretations. And sixth, Berkland will say, policy is what government chooses to do and not to do. Now, next, come to the next topic called nature of public policy. Basically, till now, you get a sense of what public policy is. What are we doing? Why it is called public? Why it is a policy, etc. Nature of public policy. First, it captures a variety of interests, and is inherently political. And is inherently political. Now, give an example of this. Think of an example and give. Not Ladli Behan Yojana. So it captures variety of interest and is inherently political. Yeah, write that in the. And for a counter perspective, write the taking back of the farm laws also. Something that the government does or does not do. Basically, it represented variety of interests. Yeah, rolling back of farm laws. Basically, government chose not to do anything there. Right? That is also public policy. Yeah. That represents variety of interest and is inherently political in nature. Second, it is purposive, that is goal oriented in nature, and coercive, that is citizens are obligated to follow it. And coercive, citizens are obligated to follow it. Third, coercive is compulsory Aadhaar, and purposive is goal oriented is anything. I mean, write compulsory Aadhaar in this one. So this is exactly what we will do in paper 2, right? Paper 2 will take a point. In class, we will discuss the examples, write and brainstorm those examples, because I mean, one mind and 10 minds are that way different, right? Next is, it can be positive. It can be positive or negative in nature. Positive means it defines what is permissible. It defines what is permissible. and negative means defines what is restricted. So when it comes to negative policy, for example, banning of liquor is a negative policy. What is permissible? For example, licensing, industrial licensing is permissible. Right, that is an example. Fourth, it can be explicit or implicit in nature. That means explicit means clearly stated in a law or a policy document. Clearly stated in a law or a policy document, and implicit is understood from government actions or inactions, etc.
All public policies are laws.
Ha.
All laws are public policy.
Not necessarily if it is not acted upon. So Thomas Dye is saying no, it's not policy. Yeah. Then we come to scope of public policy. Scope of public policy is very tough and difficult to define because it is vast and elastic in nature. It largely elastic in nature, it largely overlaps with the scope of public administration. With the scope of public administration. This can be understood in two ways. First, public administration as government in action, quote, quote unquote, government in action. Since government actions and inactions in the modern era are defined and rationalized through public policy. Defined and rationalized through public policy. The scope of policy covers everything that government does. Covers everything that the government does. Whether developmental, coercive, symbolic, or sovereign. Think of an example of this. Developmental, coercive, symbolic, or sovereign. Basically two examples so that everything that the government does. For example, imposition of curfew to signing of trade deals. That means government in action, right? Right. This is an example. To signing of free imposition of curfews to signing of free trade deals. It shows coercion and sovereign functions. I mean, for your information. The next point. Public administration as management of public affairs. Public administration as management of public affairs. Today, at the present day, governments, at present day, governments deal with every aspect and every stage of human life, such as education, health, security, marriage, employment, etc. Public policy is the instrument through which these affairs are managed. Are instrument through which these affairs are managed.
Why are we calling it public policy and not education, health, marriage, employment? All are pretty much governed by.
But public policy is not always legal, right? If the government is choosing not to do, for example, gaming sector or the cryptocurrency sector, if the government decides we won't do anything, we won't touch anything in that sector, let things happen. Is there a law there? That means that's public policy. The government inaction, government's action is done according to law, but inaction is not governed by any law, right? So that is why uh, public policy is not exactly law. Now, what are the significance of public policy? What are the significance of public policy? Basically, I'll give you certain dimensions that you write, but you also leave some space behind so that you can add certain dimensions on yourself by yourself. So first, political significance. Is the primary means by which it is the primary means by which the state addresses societal problems, sets the political agenda, and accomplishes its goals. And accomplishes its goals. Then comes administrative significance. It imparts coherence to the administration, keeps it focused, focused, guides its actions, and helps develop its structures and processes. As an example, write that thing. What is it called? The administrative reforms, that digital tool that is used for capacity building, civil services capacity building. What is it called? Karma Yogi, Mission Karma Yogi. I got platform, Mission Karma Yogi. Then comes scientific significance. The policy process generates data. The policy process generates data, allows for the analysis of successes and failures, and helps the government learn and adapt. Helps the government learn and adapt. Then comes the educative significance. The policy process is informative, teaching the government and the public, teaching the government and the public about societal problems and the experiences of intervention. Of intervention. Think of something under scientific significance and educative significance. Anything?
For educated, लड़की बचाओ,
It's not related to educational policy. Educative for the government that we learn from. Scientific significance though is easy. Evidence-based policy making. I'll write an example of this. Evidence-based policy making. Uh, as an example of evidence-based policy making, write aspirational district program overseen by Niti Aayog's dashboard. Niti Aayog's dashboard. Next, under educative significance, what is something that government did wrong and then corrected? What is the mistake that government did and corrected it eventually? Hmm?
budget, access to
Exactly. GST reforms. So inverted duty structure in GST, or right, the early GST policy had high compliance burden. Government learned from it and brought in GST reforms, leading to lower tax brackets. Next comes categories of public policy. Categories of public policy. First is distributive public policy. First is distributive public policy. It aims to distribute new resources or services to particular segments of the population. New resources or services to particular segments of the population. Example, subsidies in the farm sector. Example, subsidies in the farm sector. Then comes redistributive public policy. Aims to rearrange existing access to resources, often by shifting wealth or benefits from one group often by shifting wealth or benefits from one group to another to provide higher access to marginalized and disadvantaged groups.
Could also be an example.
Redistributive public policy?
Yeah.
Not really. Indirect taxes are not for redistribution. Luxury taxes are an example, right?
How government reduces
Progressive
taxes.
income tax is an example.
Now the government reduces taxes on everyday commodities and instead put taxes on luxury cars and cigarettes and
Ha ha
which
ha.
is accessible to the richer people.
Not necessarily. If tobacco is not only accessible to richer people, so it will also cost the pocket.
Luxury cars.
Of course. I mean that's an example also, but a better example would be progressive income tax. For example, according to your earning, you pay the tax. For example, if you are earning more than 10 crores, you pay 30% professional taxes. If you are earning 10 lakhs, you pay whatever 5%, 10%, whatever you have. Progressive income tax, such as reservation policy, is a better example. Yeah. Reservation is a much better example. Third is regulatory public policy. Regulatory public policy controls the behavior of individuals, and organizations. It can be positive or negative in nature. Positive or negative in nature, permitting permitting certain actions under specific condition, such as positive, and negative. You all understand that coercing not to do something, restricting certain actions.
Build for a public welfare and public policy bill. Introduced by the government, which is still debated upon, and it targets the opposing party and how they should, protest about certain things. And it's basically putting regulations on the behavior of opposing
Parliamentary
party
means.
politicians. Yes. I don't come to the name of it. I'll look into it.
Yeah. Add that example. Regulatory public policy. Other things would be what? Digital data protection guidelines, regulating the intermediaries, reducing or what do you say? Regulating the data fiduciaries and intermediaries. Regulatory public policy, then constituent public policy. Fourth, aims at creating or reforming government institutions and defining the rules of governance itself. Example, creating a new regulatory body, bringing in civil services reforms, things like that. Public policy is not divided into watertight compartments like these four that are given, but these are different kinds of public policy. Yeah? So one particular policy can also cover four of these elements. Yes. Next comes the public policy process or something called public policy cycle. Next topic, public policy process. Basically, it is very sequential in nature. Different stages are there. Sequential, very stage based. The first stage is agenda setting. It's a process by which uh, public problem, a public problem gains the attention, gains the attention and recognition of the government. And recognition of the government becoming a part of the public discourse. Becoming a part of the public discourse. Second stage, policy formulation or policy making. Policy formulation or making. The development of various courses of action. The development of various courses of action to address the problem. To address the problem. This is where different models of decision making come into play. This is where different models of decision making come into play. Third stage is called policy implementation. Third stage is called policy implementation. The process of putting the chosen policy into action through administrative machinery. Process of putting the chosen policy into action through administrative machinery. The fourth is policy monitoring. The continuous observation, policy monitoring. The continuous observation of policy implementation to ensure that it is on track. That it is on track. Then comes policy evaluation. Assessment of the policy's effectiveness. The assessment of policy's effectiveness in achieving its intended goals after it has been implemented. After it has been implemented. The results of the evaluation act as a feedback into the agenda setting stage. Feedback into the agenda setting stage. So first stage is agenda setting. This stage is the first one. Next, what happens? What is the second stage?
Policy formulation.
Okay. Formulation or making. Next. Now this formulated policy gets implemented. Implementation, then while this implementation is happening, okay, while this implementation is happening, we monitor this. This monitoring leads something to evaluation. Once we have data for this, this leads to evaluation, and this evaluation acts as a feedback mechanism to what agenda to pursue. So, in a day-to-day normal government policy, for example, GST as a policy, so agenda was set that we want a particular set of indirect taxes across the country. Okay? So, one nation, one tax. Agenda was set that we need this to do what? To ease the doing of business, and the interstate transfer of goods and services should be eased up. So, GST policy was formulated. Then implementation happened. Now, it is also said that policy is made while being implemented. Why it is being said? Policy is being made while it is being implemented. Yes, one point, then other. Basically, the very idea of street level bureaucracy of Lipsky. Saying now, while the normal nurses, policemen, everyday the street level bureaucrats who are working directly on the ground, they are, while implementing these policies, they are changing the policy according to the need of the society or the individual. So it is being made while it is being implemented. That is why it is important for the feedback to go. Implementation. Then comes in the implementation stage, right, that policy is being made while it is being implemented. In bracket, right, street level bureaucrats or Lipsky's street level bureaucrats. Next is what? Monitoring. So how does monitoring happen when it comes to GST? So they saw that there are certain, how different departments are responding to it. In which areas the government does not have actually the capacity to deliver this particular kind of policy, yes, or to implement GST. Similarly, through this monitoring, we get data across the country. Then we evaluate that data. We see certain problems, such as multiple duty structures. Then issues such as inverted duty structures. And example, in the next GST meeting, this will be the new agenda for change. You understand now? Lakshila, write these examples down so that I can also. So evaluation, we have found out certain issues such as multiple duty structures, inverted duty structures, etc. Okay.
So when the agenda is being set and policy is being formulated, do we not need a committee, specific dedicated committee that is who are?
Yeah, they only do that. Parliamentary standing committees, certain, things such as Niti Aayog. People sit and brainstorm and set the agenda. Whatever public is issuing is facing certain issues. They sit that how to solve these problems, etc.
There necessarily doesn't have to be a committee every time.
No. But that is how mostly government functions. Even if public is demanding something, government will set a committee, and that committee will decide, okay, what is tenable, what is not tenable at this point. Committee is not a necessity, of course. Now we go to, the big chunk, the models, various models of policy making. Before that, uh, mm, or write something as approaches to policymaking. The concept of systematic policy approach, of systematic policy approach, was first formulated by Lerner and Laswell. By Lerner and Laswell. Since then, scholars have developed various or numerous models which can be broadly classified, into two major categories. First is the process approach. First is the process approach. It focuses on the political and social processes, and the actors involved in policy making. Next comes output approaches. The focus is on the substance and the rationality of decision making itself. Focus is on the substance and rationality of the decision making process itself. These are processes. Focuses on the substance and rationality of the decision making process itself. So first is, let's write certain models under process approach. Give me that book one. They have just put it in AI and produced it, man. I mean, it's clear, but if they would have applied some mind to it, it would have been a fantastic piece. When it's, well, of course, for typing and stuff, you can use AI, but I mean, so do something with it at least. And they have just put in topic, that's it. It's clear, because there is no application of mind into what to write in what sense. Approaches you have written. Process approaches. First is institutional model under process approach. Yeah. Basically, these are the two broad approaches in which models are being made. First is institutional model. This is the traditional approach. This is the traditional approach which suggests that public policy is authoritatively determined and legitimized by state institutions like the legislature, executive, and judiciary. Next comes new institutionalist model. New institutionalist model. This says that it's a refinement of the institutional model. This approach is more concerned with how different policy types uh, a refinement of the institutional model. This approach is more concerned with how different policy types, such as distributive policy or regulatory policy, etc., relate to different branches of government actually. Relate to the different branches of government. Okay. Then comes group model. A lot of models are remaining. We'll do in the next class. So see, institutional model will simply say that anything that the government is doing, government legitimize anything that public policy is what government is legitimizing. Anything that the policy making happening, these government institutions, the legislature, judiciary, and public and judiciary, they are legitimizing it. But new institutional says not necessarily. Government has multiple institutions. Multiple institutions are concerned with multiple different kinds of policies. For example, farm sector, the policy, a lot of institutions are invested in it, such as the Food Corporation of India is invested. Ministry of Agriculture is invested. There are different other government committees which are interested. The local administration is interested. That means not just the upper level policies or upper level institutions are influencing it, but every small institution has an influence on it. So new institutionalism is basically a much broader view of how institutionalism takes place. Yes? Anything else? In these two, now I'll make you write again a few more things tomorrow because there are certain critiques in these models also. I was thinking that we'll give critiques after we have written, but we'll give critique at the same time. Easier for you. Yes, wait, I'll do it right now because I forget every time.